Hello, this is Thomas Sheltra for Moreland University, and this is Module 39, Unit 8, Activity 1. And today we're going to be looking at the School Improvement Plan priorities. And so the four that I focused on were new teacher onboarding, observation, and mentoring, which changed from my original School Improvement Plan priority 1, where I was going to focus on teacher retention. But one of the things that I realized with my mentor and some of the reflection process was that a lot of teachers leave for a host of different reasons, and there's too many variables to try and track down to keep teachers at a school long term in an international setting. But one of the things that I think we can focus on is making sure that once we get teachers onboarded into the school, using the observation and the mentoring portion as a way to try and build relationships with teachers, make them feel supported, and hopefully that can be a variable that is something that will make teachers want to stay long term because they feel supported in the classroom and they feel supported in the community. The second one that we're focused on for the school improvement plan is priority 2, and that's going to be ELL enhancement and language support. And we do have an ELL team, and for the first time next year, we'll have an ELL chair, so they'll be able to be in the meetings and kind of help us. But essentially, we want to just take the things that we're already doing as a school and strengthen them and kind of enhance them, so that way we can support non-English and ELL subject teachers. One of the things that our school likes to say, which is true, is that we're all English teachers, but I think that one of the things we can do is try to use professional development to try to strengthen some of those skills. The priority 3 that we're going to focus on is student well-being and early intervention. And so what are the ways in which we can identify when a student is struggling before it becomes too late, and sort of make sure that all teachers at the school have those sort of preventative measures and awareness for students on campus. And for priority 4 is parent and community engagement. Again, those are things that we already do at the school, but how can we strengthen them, especially now that next year for 26 and 27 academic year, we're going to have our first graduating class. And so how can we kind of enhance those kinds of things? So again, priority 1, things that I've completed this year. So with my mentor, Mr. Cumberworth, we created the school improvement plan handbook for onboarding, what teachers can expect. We have a buddy system where we already sort of engage with the teachers that are coming to the school but haven't yet landed, making sure that they've kind of done some of the pre-boarding things, like, obviously their visa, making sure they understand what classes they're going to teach, the types of tools and resources that they're going to need to succeed and that we will provide as a school. And then also for chairs, I created an observation booklet and also a coaching booklet, so that way we can sort of be aligned in the way that we observe teachers using the TL strands 1 through 4, and then also making sure that when we have those coaching conversations, the reflections that the new teachers give us are very meaningful and purposeful, and kind of create that culture of support, and then also where the teachers feel supported, and then they also have that area for growth. For ELL enhancement and language support, so one of the things that we did is we created a ELL strategy bank for teachers, and then also we had a heavy emphasis later on in the year, early in quarter 3, all the way till we had our final examinations last week. And one of the things that we did was create vocabulary quizzes that would really kind of help students prepare for those comprehensive examinations. The other thing that can be strengthened through next year is also the ELL look-fors. And so one of the things that my mentor and I talked about was that some of the ELL teachers circled around to different subjects to try to identify areas of support and to try to help other subject teachers, but they didn't go through our social studies teachers in the upper school. And so I think that was an area that was kind of missed, and maybe for next year we can make sure that those look-fors as they do their walkthroughs and peer observations, that they can make sure that they go to every subject, so that way every teacher can feel supported with the ELN enhancement. And then the other thing is just to try to kind of create that consistency in our EIP English implementation plan, have that be more consistent. For student well-being and early intervention, so some of the things is like we just created sort of an identity tree to sort of like have keys in which students we can identify that we think, so some students might be very tired, some students might be hungry all the time, needing to go to the bathroom, they feel disconnected. And so as teachers, creating those sorts of keys in which we can identify those students as being perhaps maybe a little depressed or sad or stressed out, and to kind of reach out to them and to focus on their, social and emotional well-being, rather than just kind of saying that, they're just being lazy or they're not working hard or things like that. And so maybe, we need to make sure that all teachers have that ability to identify and be preventative. And then also in our school culture, we already have those sorts of kinds of tangible and intangible ways, through traditions, routines, core values in our school culture, of making sure that students are taken care of outside of the classroom for things like stress. And we have a lot of initiatives that we do in the school to kind of make sure that students are relaxed and de-stressed before examinations. But again, I want to be able to work with our school psychologist to make sure that we have those measures for all teachers and professional development, to make sure that we can focus on those preventative measures. With parent community engagement, again, things like emailing parents at the beginning of the year and through each unit, and having information, coffee chats and Q&As. Those are things that we already do very well, I think, as a school, and place a greater emphasis on that kind of communication to increase parent buy-in with the goals and the mission of the school. But now that we're going to have our first graduating class, I think one of the things that's really important is making sure that we have a strong alumni network that's built and in place before we start handing out diplomas next year. So that way we can have more engagement with parents to talk about our school, focus on the things that are going to help their child, and using our first graduating class as sort of a marketing tool to make sure that parents are fully engaged and committed to our school and when they send their kids here. So a couple of attention areas that I think are really important when it comes to implementing these plans for 2026, 2027. The first one is consistency across teachers. And so, of course, I think whenever it's something that we want to make a school-wide initiative, is we want to have, obviously that's going into risk 2 with time and follow through, is we want to make sure that we have the professional development and also the building of routines. So that way teachers can enforce policies, whether it's EIP, whether it's, the ELL strategies, and then also the observations and the coaching sessions with their chairs or senior leadership. We just want to make sure that we have enough professional development that goes into training teachers. So that way, when we build these positive routines, we can see consistent action. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of lacked the last 3 years, is that we have a lot of policies and a lot of really great policies, but when it comes to teacher implementation of those policies, they can look very different depending on the teacher and the subject, grade level, etc. And then the third risk is making sure that we collect data that is significant, to make sure that when we put in the sort of data, or when we take the data and the parent feedback, and we create these policies for implementation, that we're actually getting the right kind of data that's going to help support these initiatives, and make sure that when we are building these routines for teachers, that they're meaningful and purposeful. And so this is kind of what it looks like as far as what I've done during the course of the year, as we've worked on these school improvement plans, working with my mentor, and now going over in our conversations, what are the things that can be done, what are the things that can't be done because it's a network policy and not a school policy, and what are the things that we can do already. So I already talked about those 4 areas, but here when we go to 26, 27, so again, we've already have that buddy system with chairs and new teachers coming in, but basically starting the year off with a lot of good, meaningful professional development that is going to help create positive routines for our teachers, for our staff, for our senior leadership, to use our ELL strategies in the classroom, create preventative measures and identification for teachers in the classroom, so we can focus on the students that need our help, need our support, and might be stressed out rather than just being thinking that students are lazy or not interested, and trying to find the root problems as to why there might be some issues in the classroom. And then, also the last thing is just to make sure that we have solid feedback for our school improvement plan, or for my school improvement plan initiatives, and to make sure that there's going to be buy-in, not just from the parents with priority 4, but also we want to have buy-in from the faculty and the staff to make sure that these initiatives can be successful in the first place. And here you see sort of a layout from the beginning of August to the end of June of what this implementation plan could look like. Again, one of the things we want to do is start off the year running, because that's when, generally, I think teachers are in a very good mood. They're in a mood to work hard. And here's where we want to start with the PD, setting up the structures of the 4 school improvement plans, and making sure that teachers aren't being told that they're just going to do something without the communication of how they can be successful, but doing the full gamut to make sure that teachers understand that this is what the new policy is, this is what success looks like with exemplars, and then this is how we're going to practice it, and this is how you're going to create routines, and then also the follow through from the chairs and the senior leadership to make sure that when we are going into the classroom, we can see these types of initiatives being practiced. Again, an observation is just a snapshot in time, but when it comes to, the mentoring, the coaching, ELL strategies, or student well-being, those are things that I think that we can kind of see in each observation in some small capacity. And so the goals for the next academic year, again, so I want to have strong induction into the mentoring system, so that way we can support teachers, make them feel confident when they go into the classroom, give them the tools that they need for support. And again, I believe that will also, those kinds of things will be variables that in a good way will help sort of keep that teacher retention and have them stay for longer than 2 or 3 years and move on to the next school. The next thing is to continue with the ELL support, to take the things that we were already doing, but again, to strengthen them, have PD sessions where we can create good habits for teachers in non-English subjects, and help sort of enhance those subject-based skills that students need by continuously practicing English. Student well-being, again, taking the things that we've already done, but one of the things is making sure that teachers have the tools for early intervention and prevention, to make sure that they can identify those students that truly need help. And then the very last thing is to create the types of partnerships for students with parents, and then also at the university level, with preparing them to make sure that parents know that we have their students' best interest at heart, and then also making sure that they get into the best schools, and that's kind of what it is that we do here at Basis, to make sure that kids go to top schools, but we want to make sure that they're socially and emotionally supported throughout that process. And then in summary, so I think, one of the things is that the positive overall impact from this plan and the interviews that I conducted really helped me as far as understand the sort of practical things that are needed for the school, to create a long-term vision, where some of the issues that we've had the last 3 years don't exist, and students are relying a lot more on studying and speaking in English. And so the next thing that we have is we have our interviews. So here we're going to interview Annie and Tim. Then we're going to interview Tim, Dan, and Tammy. They're going to be talking about the ELL strategies. Alex, who's an AP psychology teacher focusing on student well-being. And then Tim again, talking about parent and community engagement. Okay, so once you see those interviews, that will be the end of it. Thank you very, very much for watching. Have a great day.
How to make the coaching sessions better. My thought is that maybe to give me more feedbacks based on individual students, and I think the coach can have a better and deeper research on those students' behaviors and those individual personalities and their daily performances based on every different students. And then he goes into the classroom to see how they react to my lectures, lesson plans, and those ongoing classes. Based on all this information collected, I wish the coach can help me to give more solid advices based on how I can respond to each student's reactions and their learning process.
Okay, yeah. So for next year, when it comes to observations in the classroom, I think it can be very beneficial for the observer at times, especially if something interesting to add to whatever the classroom activity is. I think it's beneficial to the students because what they might add could be something that sticks in the student's memory, and that's what allows them to remember a particular learning point or something, learning objective that whatever that class is doing that day. So. As far as being where we are when it comes to ELL, right now the policy is such that students, even repeated violations, they don't take necessarily too seriously. So if we could kind of formulate something to where after so many violations, they would actually, if something would have, some kind of assignment would have to be completed which would be then counted as like a quiz grade So for them, for the students, that's very, that's what's paramount for them when it comes to their grade book. So that could somehow be tied if we could find a feasible, implementation to do that. I think that would make the students be more accountable to actually try to speak English.
So from an ELL standpoint, in order to better help our students, I think that if other subjects can maybe focus a bit more on explicit vocabulary instruction, sentence frames to help them with short answers or free response questions, maybe even some subjects having more free response questions, but also focusing on oracy. I think students sometimes just need to be able to think a little more critically and a little bit more with more complex structures. And so having conversations that have sentence frames that they can use in order to express their ideas, and maybe just some structured back and forth for oracy and discussion could also be helpful.
Okay, so for this year we have been doing for the vocab quizzes, and then we're on each Friday the students are required to take vocab quizzes for every subject, and then that grade is counted to their final grades as well, for part of their final grades. And then for next year we're thinking maybe we can do more vocabulary focused activities practice. We want to build a vocabulary wall for each classroom, or even across the wall on the bulletin boards, and then that way we can build on to some of the academic vocabularies, enhance, foster, something like that. And then as well as for each classroom that has subject specific vocabulary, where if we put that in the and then embed it in a daily practice, during the do now, where they review for the vocabulary, and then students make it together and then stick it on the wall. I think that will definitely boost their memories for that specific vocabulary for that subject.
So for well-being of students is always something that teachers think about, but oftentimes we feel like we don't have time to identify it. We have an overwhelming number of students, and I think a lot of teachers overthink it as well. We can also just look at students. Does the student seem more sleepy than usual? Lack of sleep is often the first sign of a student dealing with mental health issues like depression or even an anxiety disorder. Lack of sleep quality. So if they come to class, over a period of time, maybe a week, sleepy, looking, dark-eyed, this is something that we can easily identify, especially if they're not usually like this. So I think, for us to be more aware that even slight changes in behavior, a drop in grades, any of these things can signal well-being of students that are suffering, that need help. And just a simple identification of that is something we could do going forward and pass it along to the appropriate people at the school. So lack of sleep, sudden drop in grades, or even a sudden change in weight over time can all be signs that their well-being is in danger. So keep an eye out for that.
When it comes to parent engagement, I think there doesn't need to be, in my personal philosophy, I don't need to send unit emails or anything like that. However, of course, if there are problems starting to occur, then yes, the parent student should be notified early. So it's very possible that they can also help correct whatever the potential problem is